Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Oh, how's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scott McKay, and today I have a returning guest on, and we're going to talk about a subject that, it just has to be a lot of fun. It can't possibly be anything else. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that on social, I'm at Scott McKay almost everywhere, with one T, of course. And that's on X, that's on True Social, that's on YouTube, that's on TikTok, at Real Scott McKay on both Instagram and Threads. If you have not yet joined the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook, I invite you to do so as always, of course. And the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. My returning guest indeed today is Dana Shergill. She is a kinky wellness coach, of course, from the Niagara Falls, Canada region, which is a very pretty place. Welcome back to the show, Dana.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Well, how can we not be excited? This is an incredible topic. We're going to talk about sexual aggression in the best way possible.
Yes. Well, aggression is such a huge topic to begin with.
And one you specialize in.
Well, I think that all of us need a reintroduction to it. I think that aggression's one of those things that have come with such a strong and heavy stigma that we need to reintroduce ourselves to the positive and constructive side of aggression.
Well, and interestingly enough, you and I were chit-chatting briefly about this before we hit record on this particular episode. It seems like men, perhaps ironically to some, have a bigger problem with this concept than women do. I mean, I would surmise that we as men are afraid this is going to feel like rape to women. Anything that rhymes with violence, which aggression certainly does, just seems like it's a wrong-headed approach when it comes to women interacting with women, let alone having sex with them. Yet any guy who's ever read a romance novel understands that, man, women are naughty little creatures with a lot of aggression going on in their minds. So why don't you put our minds at ease as a male audience here, Dana, and tell us how the real world actually works sexually.
Well, first of all, aggression is something that we all have. It's a natural human behavior. And I feel like when it comes to men, there have done studies with male mice. They actually had more positive outcomes when they were experiencing with aggression. And so it's one of those things, it's really how we play with it. So we can normalize aggression when we see things in sports teams or MMA fighting. But for some reason, when we translate that into the bedroom and we have aggressive behavior that we can play with our partners, for some reason, it's acceptable in one context, but not in the other. But really, it's about embracing this part of ourselves. And that's what's able to help us set up healthy boundaries and advocate for our needs and really confront difficulties, which you can use through aggression.
Well, yeah, I think you've politely and concisely described how this really works socially. But in the bedroom, it still has to be fun. It still has to be interesting. It still has to be very horny, or else people are going to feel like, well, this sex just feels like work, and I feel like an old married couple. So where are the boundaries there? How would you describe that dynamic?
So yeah, how you can do aggression in the bedroom is it can come out in waves verbally. So you can say things to your partner, you can raise the tone of your voice, you can use specific language that comes out, and that can all come in the confines of what you set out in your boundaries and your limits. But also physically, aggression can come out in tearing apart clothes. You know, you can use your teeth, you can use your hands, you can get really into that. But then also, obviously, on the physical side, aggression can come out that way. And again, it's about knowing your strength levels. So when you're playing with aggression, you can use, let's say, wrestling, for instance. You want to wrestle in the bedroom. If you are the stronger partner, you have to play with that. You have to use it as a dance. You don't want to overpower unless, of course, that is exactly what you're looking for. But you want to draw that out. So it's about becoming in that infinite flow state of between you and your partner where you're pushing and you're pulling and you're, putting pressure on your partner and then kind of giving back when you want your partner to give that aggression side back to you. So it becomes this playfulness that you can do physically, verbally, or even in the context of tearing apart clothes.
The way I tend to look at that is we as men are providers and protectors at the primal level. Obviously, women can go get their own job and bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan, et cetera, and they can take Brazilian jiu-jitsu and beat the hell out of people if they're attacked. I mean, all that's pretty cool. As you already know, we're raising empowered women around here. My wife is certainly one of them, and my daughter is all about hitting people on the roller derby rink and on the BMX track and showing a little aggression. So we understand the healthy side of that. And I indeed believe that women fantasize, hopefully it's at least a bit rooted in reality, right? That this man can protect her. He has physical strength that's bigger than hers. And even though, obviously, I mean, I hope it's obvious, she really doesn't want him to slap her around and control her with his strength to the point where he's kind of got her under his thumb, et cetera, et cetera. If there's enough trust in this sexual relationship, which of course there has to be, in my opinion, and I think it's a pretty well-traveled opinion, then what happens in the bedroom is sort of tantamount to driving a Ferrari and see what this thing could do on the racetrack. So the guy holds her down, pins her down, spanks her, pulls her hair, tells her what he's going to do to her, and it's like revving this thing up, and it's just a big orgasmic response because it's like, wow, look how capable my guy is. You think I'm onto something there?
Oh, absolutely.
I figured
and also,
I was,
it's even with that, like, women like that sense of being chosen, like picked. Like some women, like that's. Well, I could take myself for instance. Like that is a feeling that comes through. So it's one of those things. Like, yes, in the physical form, like this man is choosing you, and he's going to devour you no matter what challenges comes up. Like he wants you, and that can come out through that. And also kinky wellness is really big on normalizing like the concept of hold me harder, right? Women are not these fragile things that we've been made to believe. We want to play rough, and just because you got older doesn't mean that the desire to play rough went away. So it's about going back to almost those playful roots and bringing them forward. And now that you're an adult, the strength levels have just increased. And again, it's about relearning your boundary of pain, your tolerances, your strength limits on each end. So I think that's exciting for everyone.
All right, you're talking about pain and you're talking about tolerance levels. I have always been, frankly, amazed by the high percentage of women, first of all, who want aggression in the bedroom. Okay, they don't want tender lovemaking, at least all the time. I am going to freely admit that most of the sex my wife and I have from the very beginning and 18 years later really does resemble porn quite often. Okay. Mm-hmm. And very, very rarely is it just tender lovemaking. I mean, ain't nobody got time for that. We're horny and we want to get off and we trust each other. But I indeed have been amazed over the years at the high percentage of women who really want rambunctious physical sexual experiences, and they want to be naughty about it. They don't want it to be polite and straight-laced. And there are crazy fantasies. I mean, anybody who's ever turned the pages of Nancy Friday's My Secret Garden will probably be shocked if they're uninitiated by this. But I think most men with a reasonable amount of high-quality sexual experience are already nodding their head in agreement. It's not just in porn. Women want their hair pulled. They want to be spanked when you're having them doggy style. I had a girlfriend, I mean, you know, I don't know if this is TMI, but she asked me to bite her deltoid till it bled like a vampire. And I mean, that's where I drew the line. My boundary was somewhere before drawing blood. But I just couldn't believe, well, she was a redhead too, so. But the boundaries that women don't have in the bedroom are just amazing sometimes. And another thing you alluded to that I think deserves at least acknowledgement is women are indeed not fragile little creatures. Yes, we need to warm you up before we start, you know, dropping the jackhammer on you. But once everything is all nicely lubricated and everything, y'all can take a pounding in the bedroom. It's amazing. I mean, vaginas aren't fragile.
Well, I really believe pain is built within women. They're childbearers. We go through menstrual pains nowadays. Like, pain is something that the women, like, we are very familiar with it and we have high tolerance for it. And again, pain is one of those things to reintroduce yourself to it. It doesn't always have to be in a negative way. When you're pulling on the skin and when you're biting into the skin, you're releasing your fascia. within your body. And that's actually what holds some of our memories and emotions. And so when you're warming that up and you're melting that, you're actually getting stuck energy, stuck emotions out. So it will look red, it might be painful, but you're going to feel relaxed after, just like if you had a rough massage or played a vigorous sports game. The same idea applies here.
Okay, so you're clarifying the context in which we tend to like pain. And right there at the end, you sort of brought it together in a way that made it sound as if, well, okay, women might not be all that different than men after all. And you're talking about sexual pain and this, that, and the other. And I don't think men think of sex as needing or supposing to be painful. So if that's something women prefer, so be it. And we need to learn the way of the world instead of trying to wish it were different. But yeah, as you were talking, I am considering how sometimes, during the act of penetration, if you want me to be completely clinical about it, which I'm sure you don't, but
no, it's all good.
It just seems like the best way to put it right now. Sometimes women can seem like they're in pain and then they erupt in pleasure, like it hurts so good kind of thing,
And that's a fact.
And that's a fact. Okay, so that's a part of the female sexual experience.
It should be more openly talked about. I do feel like there is a stigma if a woman comes out and says, I want it more rougher. Maybe there's stigmas on everyone, but pain is one of them as well, this rougher essence. Because there is this weird stigma where if you do like something more rough, then maybe something's wrong with you or you've watched too much pornography. But that's how we used to play. Like if you look at little kids out in the field, like they're running around, they're on the ground, they're flipping each other over, they're roughhousing. And we should bring that back. Like that's just because you got older, just because you're in a different stage of your life, like that's still fun to play for lots of us. Lots of us still want to play downright dirty. And if that means getting a bruise here and there, that's just part of the game.
Well, at the primal evolutionary level, almost all mammalian species are exactly the same way. I mean, you can see puppies and kittens play around and it's really no different.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty rough and tumble and they bite each other. And I think we as humans are indeed no different. It's interesting. There is porn that revolves around simulated MMA fighting between men and women that eventually, of course, degenerates, if you will, into wanton hardcore screwing. And I've had several people tell me that's like the horniest porn they watch. That's what it's about. I need a girlfriend who will do that with me. So this really is something that, despite perhaps the stigma and even people's shame or embarrassment towards admitting it's something that turns them on, I think a massively high percentage of the population would really love to have it be part of their repertoire, if you will, of what happens in the bedroom. I really do.
Well, quite honestly, I think that if they don't have an avenue for aggression, it should be in the bedroom. And that's really what I'm pushing here, is that you can't pretend that we don't have aggression. So if you don't have a healthy outlet to channel it, then that's when you run into problems. And that's when those negative sides of aggression pop up and you get aggressive in moments where you shouldn't. You get aggressive in front of a family member where you shouldn't. Wrong time, wrong place. And that's because how our society is even structured right now. We get aggression all the time, like whether you're sitting in traffic or your boss is doing something to you. And we have these microaggressions all day. And if you don't have somewhere to put it, and especially in a playful, fun manner, then that's when it's going to explode.
We're perpetrating like people don't get this, and this is some massive epiphany we're dropping on people. But you know what? It just occurred to me deep down at our core, all of us understand this very, very valid and valuable connection between human sexuality and aggression. Because when someone is behaving in sort of that passive aggressive or microaggressive or even full on aggressive way, like they're a little cranky or they're just mad or they're easily offended, what do people tend to say to them, half joking? Like, you need to get laid.
Yeah.
That's what they tell people. And that's what they're talking about. And we all know what's going on psychosocially when someone makes that exhortation to someone who's acting cranky or aggressive, kind of out of context. We all instinctively know what that's about. So it isn't like we're blind to this or that we don't feel it. It's just not enough of us admit it, especially when the chips are down. And I think we as guys need to learn how to lead in a way that makes women feel more comfortable admitting that the aggression is going to be hot and sexy to them and empowering them to enjoy it. And I think ultimately that's going to come down to how comfortable a woman feels with a man. Is this really the kind of context that's sort of like taking a high-performance exotic car out onto the track to see what it could do relative to just going 65 miles an hour on the highway and behaving? Or could this guy theoretically hurt me, kill me, put me in the hospital? I mean, that's the difference between the fantasy, for example, and a real fear that this guy's going to hurt me or rape me or whatever. A guy has to make a woman feel comfortable in that context, or none of this good stuff's ever going to happen.
Well, even just to touch on the safety element of that, what I want to remind people too is like anytime you get into a physical thing, whether that's in sports or in sex, there is a chance that you could actually be injured. And there are injuries that can lead up to that, just like in sports. There's been sports deaths that have happened. And so no one's saying to take it to a level that you can't and you're not familiar with or you're not comfortable with, but it's okay to start small and you can work your way up, but also take notice that there is potential for you to actually get hurt. But that doesn't mean not do it. Like there's tons of activities out there that are adventurous and get your blood pumping. And we wouldn't tell someone, oh, like there's a small danger here, so just don't do it at all. But I feel like when it comes to sex, there is this like, just don't be adventurous, don't be physical, don't try to push the boundaries.
I think when people aren't risk takers and they're really super safe and super conservative and perhaps, dare I say, haven't done a whole lot that's athletic in their lives, kind of more of a bookworm type of person, sometimes this kind of sexual aggression is something that needs to be coaxed out of them. They need someone to kind of lead them into that experience. And of course, this is sort of a running ironic joke in the movies. There's always the dorky, nerdy girl or the dorky, nerdy guy. Ultimately, they get a boyfriend or a girlfriend and they're real shy and they're real conservative. And then finally they erupt into some wild, riotous, ass-slapping kind of sexual experience. And everybody watching laughs in the movie because it's ironic humor at that point. So this may feel ironic to some people, but if we have any inclination deep within our soul or our psyche that this is something we want to have happen in the bedroom, we might need to let ourselves feel a little more vulnerable and give it a try and see what we think.
Well, even to touch on the risk taking, like I genuinely believe that if you don't have a healthy balance with one of the types of aggressions, which is called instrumental aggression, and instrumental aggression it's very goal orientated, it's strategic, it's what you use to make outcomes. And this is the type of aggression that involves calculating the risks and benefits. So there's different levels of aggression and there's different types. So you definitely need aggression in your life, and calculating risks is one of them. Like that's what it's going to help you with.
I'm picturing Pete Townsend beating his guitar into smithereens on the stage when you said instrumental aggression.
Yeah.
And as you defined it, it really isn't much different, is it? I think when people aren't aggressive at all, they're lying to themselves, first of all. It's getting bottled up. Something is getting bottled up because life isn't all daisies and unicorns. You know, things happen that piss you off. Things happen that you need to vent about. And really, sexuality is a great sandbox to play all that out in with someone you trust. Now, sand and sex don't go very well together, of course. Anybody who's ever tried to have the proverbial sex on the beach already knows the drink is much better than the reality. But indeed, it's like a playground for life, right? Is sex.
Well, it's a biological requirement for one of our human survivals, right? So we have air, food, drink, and sex is part of that. So even if you relate it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're not eating, you get hangry. So if you're not having good sex and the sex that you want, like it's not enough to just be getting laid. You have to be checking off that you feel satisfied as well. So that's also another problem that I do believe that we have some people that are out there having sex, but it's not the sex they want. So they are still being left with sexual frustration at the end of the day, which is going to lead into their aggressive side. So it's about getting the sex you want and making sure you feel satisfied at the end of the day with it so you don't get frustrated.
I hope this question doesn't seem too obvious. In other words, well, the answer is something I'm not going to want to hear, and that's the way it's going to be. Because I think you might have some insight into it. How do we really know if our sex life really is not satisfying to us? And how much satisfaction can we really expect out of our sex lives? And how can we identify what satisfaction is going to look and feel like? And most of all, how do we get our partner to be part of that journey with us? You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people don't even know how to ask this question. Yeah.
I do believe it's a very big question, and it's a great question. Of course, I think one of the things is it's going to be individual to everyone, but really what I want to really be taken away is that for some people, I don't want you to be left with that feeling of chasing it. Like if you're satisfied, you're going to feel full. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to think about it. You're going to reminisce about it and be like, damn, that was a good time. But if you have sex and you're kind of like chasing the next time, or you're running for another one, like you weren't satisfied because there's still something that you're itching to get. So I think that movement of like running too quickly into the next time could be something that even if you are having sex, it's not satisfying. And when it comes to partners, it is that communication, of course. But again, it's way easier to say, oh, communicate with your partner than to actually communicate it with, because it's so scary to ask your partner for something new. Especially when the whole society around aggression already has a stigma and already almost shames you for even addressing that this is something that we have within us.
Yeah, it takes guts for a partner. I was thinking especially women, but I'm thinking it really isn't gender specific. I mean, even in a gay relationship, it would take a lot of guts for someone to say to the other person, I want to be spanked. I want you to pull my hair. I want you to bite me. Because there's a lot of risk that the person might think, my goodness, you're deviant or you're weird, et cetera, et cetera. But indeed, I think with experience, people realize more of us are into that than not. And perhaps that fear can subside with a little bit of experience, you know?
And it's normal. Like we do have primal things within us that we want to and play with and go there. And it's actually healthy for us to get those primal urges out and like become more than what our body is and turn into this other thing, because it gives us almost a mental break than our day to day. And when you have a mental break, regardless of how that comes in, then you're able to come back into your day to day life with a fresh ideas and be like, you know what worked yesterday might not work today. And I find that when people are stuck in they're not getting that moment to think of other things, then they fall into a routine and then they wake up, a year later and they haven't really done anything because they've just been on autopilot for this whole time. Yeah. So getting creative in your sex is that really great outlet to just stop the routine, to get your mind back, to get your thoughts back, and to really think about what you want and where your goals are.
Yeah, I've heard sex described as playtime for adults, and I thought that was somewhat profound in its simplicity, because I think that's pretty much accurate.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what even aggression is. Like, this is just rough play at the end of the day.
It's a sport.
It's a sport. It's cathartic. It's fun. You laugh. You're reminded of what your body can actually do. You can push yourself. And that's the other thing, too, is that I find that it's okay to use healthy outlets for aggression to push yourself. That's what causes motivation. And when you learn how to motivate yourself in one avenue of your life, if you use kinky wellness, for instance, then you can learn how to motivate yourself in other avenues. It's a skill that transcends multiple areas of your life.
Yeah, and done right, it's even a good workout.
Yeah.
On top of all else. Yeah, you mentioned the word kinky again, and of course it's in the title of your practice. You are a kinky wellness coach. Your website is kinkywellness.ca, since you're in Canada, and we'll send the guys to that at the end here, of course. But let's focus on that word. If you think sex in and of itself is fraught with stigma and shame, man, that word kinky is loaded by comparison.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think most people would hear the word kinky and think deviant, not normal, above and beyond the call of duty, a little weird, frankly. But of course, you're a huge advocate for being kinky. So help set the record straight on what kinkiness means to you, especially given the topic du jour of being aggressive sexually.
Absolutely. Kinky, to me, there is a lot of stigma around kinky than just that word kink. And regardless of it, it really just includes any type of activity or relationship dynamic that falls outside of what society deems acceptable. So what was kinky 5 years ago is not kinky now. What kinky is now might not be kinky in 5 years from now. So it's always changing and it's always redefining itself. But what I love so much about it is that it uses the power of imagination. And so when you use aggressive behavior in a sexual context with the addition of using your imagination, that's when you really can play into those power dynamic roles. That's when you can really get into taking power, giving away power. And when you regain power and say you are in the more dominant role, per se, using aggression, if you're someone who doesn't have any power outside in the day-to-day life, like if you work a job where your boss is micromanaging you, then it's okay to gain that control back through your sex. And so you can do it through whether it's verbal aggressive behavior or light aggressive to heavy aggressive behavior, but you can regain that. And that's healthy for you because we need a balance. You can't live constantly with no power at all. Like it's not something that's reserved for particular type of people. Like we all have power within us. It's just about tapping into that. So, and sometimes you do need your imagination to do that. So it's just reconnecting back to imagination in a fun, playful way.
Now, I find it fascinating that you would say perhaps things that were kinky 5 years ago aren't now.
Yeah.
Give us some practical examples off the top of your head. And I understand this may not be as concrete a subject as perhaps I'm making it out to be, but let's go for it anyway. Give us some practical examples of what may have seemed kinky 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Let's, for the sake of easing the conversation here, call it before the advent of, say, broadband pornography. That may have felt kinky before and no longer is. And then tell us what's kinky in the year 2024, going into 2025. Give us some examples of that too, before and after.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would say going back, I would argue that even masturbation was kinky at one point. It was not something that people could openly talk about. It wasn't something that was even encouraged. We had modern day medicines back then were saying that it's bad for society. But then you look at it now and masturbation is encouraged. It's healthy for you. You should be masturbating. But you could say that with open relationships and the popularity of them that have come into at least what I see here in Canada has increased from 10, 15 years ago. And maybe it might be that people are becoming more open about it, but it's also the internet. The internet has been able to spread information faster. And you could even take that even globally. So for instance, there's countries that they can't talk about sex and it's completely censored, not just partially censored like we have here. So but what I think for 2024, what's kinky now, I honestly want to say reclaiming your sexual health and healing, because it's about taking it back. And I think that there's empowerment in it. And I think when it comes to sex, we've been so openly giving it to other people and thinking it's an outside thing that you have to get. But really, you have to be sexually satisfied with yourself first, your body, how you view yourself, how you love and play with yourself as well. And I think it's about encouraging people to take that power back and relearn what's good for you. Sexual education is not a one size fits all, but we've been programmed to almost believe that it is, but it's so customizable. So what works for you might not work for me and vice versa. I
don't know, Dana. That sounds like the opposite of kinky to me. That sounds reactionary.
I want people to do that. I want people to take back and I want people to reclaim kink and not view it as some sort of taboo subject.
Well, yeah. I mean, after all, you are the queen of kinky wellness. So I guess I should have seen that one coming, that you were going to talk about reclaiming wellness and the like. What if we add to that losing that deep-seated sexual shame is perhaps a new form of kink, and shamelessly going after what we want to the extent that it's indeed healthy in the bedroom?
Yeah. And I think it's about and it's more than that too. I think that I've seen also the extreme sides of it where people do take their sexuality and sex and they wear it on their sleeve and that is their personality. And it's about like finding balance there. Like we all have multiple layers of ourselves as well. And this is such a big part of it. And I feel like people sometimes pretend that they don't have sexuality and they don't have kinks and they don't have fantasies. You should be embracing this because that's what gives it light and fun and excitement.
But we love those straight-laced mommies with their Dooney and Burke bags who, once you get them in the bedroom and they feel comfortable with you, just turn into little vixens. Mm-hmm. Well, that's just really hot. And It seems like the more this aggression is bottled up, the more it comes out when it's finally unleashed. It's like getting a genie out of a bottle. almost literally. It's almost
well,
like,
it has to come
your
out.
wish is her command at that point too,
Whether it's going to come out. That's the thing about aggression. You can't hold it in forever. And if you do, it's going to affect different organs of your body. And it's one of those things that you don't want to hold it within yourself. This is something you want to get it out. Like you need to get it out for your health.
Have you ever watched old episodes of I Dream of Jeannie from the 60s with Barbara Eden?
I know the costume, Scott. I don't know that. I didn't watch those shows.
Oh my God. It is the horniest show of all time. It is all just latent sexual foreplay. The whole show, constantly. In the 1960s genre that it is, you couldn't even expose Barbara Eden's navel. But he literally has this woman who will do whatever she wants him to do. And they never do anything sexual. And I mean, let's just put it this way. A 25, 27-year-old Barbara Eden is just hot. Oh my God, just hot stuff. And she has this cute little voice and she's just dripping in femininity. And, Larry Hagman, who's also famously known for having been JR on Dallas like 15 years later, is just openly sexually frustrated, but he just refuses to touch her. And then there's this fear, like, what kind of baby would we have if you become pregnant, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's this kind of play acting like they can't have sex because it would just be wrong. And I'm not even sure you're the same species I am, but it is like just foreplay. The whole show is one of the horniest things I've ever seen in my entire life that probably in many ways is more sexually titillating than porn. And it's literally because she's bottled up. And whenever she's not bottled up, she just emerges with all this energy and all this desire to play. And sometimes she gets angry and aggressive, if you've ever seen the show. And it's like the hottest, cutest thing ever. And the guy just won't do anything about it. And you're like throwing rotten veggies at the TV going, dude, she wants you. You know what I mean? And he just won't do anything, which of course is part of the ironic humor of the show. But when you're talking about sexual energy being bottled up and conflating that with genies and et cetera, that topic had to come up. But yeah, go watch some episodes of that show. I think the kinky wellness coach in you would really adore it.
I will go check it out. Well, that's the thing about like aggression can come out in cute ways. It's like when people see babies and they're like, oh, you're so cute, I want to eat you. And they come over and they just like start like
a little weird.
Poking.
Yeah.
Well, like that's that cuteness overload that can come out. So again, like we have it in sexual context and we have it in non-sexual context. And it's just there out in the society and out we live. Like aggression is hovering over us. It can be super beneficial when we use it correctly.
Yeah, kind of thinking about what you're saying, cuteness, I define cuteness as eliciting a desire to give it love and affection, like a baby duck or a baby human or a puppy. And I indeed love cute female human beings. I've always been really attracted to cuteness in the feminine form. So instead of wanting, a voluptuous, tall, statuesque supermodel, I've always been attracted to cute little women with bright eyes and, lots of giggles who look like former gymnasts and stuff like that. And my wife is one of those. And it is really horny to give them a good pounding in the bedroom and just watch them do cute little things sexually while you're biting their lip and giggling and stuff. It's great. So there's indeed this strange relationship between cuteness and aggression. It seems ironic on the surface, but yet in reality, it's kind of like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I think that they go more hand in hand than people realize.
Yeah, how about that? Well, this has been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And before I say anything else I probably regret having said in public, what I want to do is I want to send these guys to your website, which of course is kinkywellness.ca. But when you go to mountaintopodcast.com/Dana, D-A-N-A, which is your first name, of course, they'll be teleported magically to that site. What are they going to find there, Dana, when they visit?
Absolutely. So when you go to my website, you're going to learn more about what kinky wellness is. And if you're ready to take your first steps into kinky wellness, I do have a kinky wellness textbook that you can buy. And it comes in an e-learning format and you'll get the PDF worksheet separately. So that will break down all the core basics of kinky wellness. And so you can begin your journey and you'll learn a little bit more about me and what we do. But something that I'm very, very proud about the website as well is that we do have a host of other kinky wellness advocates. So there's a range range of mental health and physical health for both men and women. So if you want to check that out, then more than welcome to. But thank you again.
Well, you're quite welcome. You know, our spouses are such happy, satisfied people, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a great life. Well, once again, Dana, I do thank you for being on, and we'll do this again. You're always a great guest. Yeah. Gentlemen, visit mountaintoppodcast.com and just take away all the freebies. Download the book, Sticking Point Solved. Get in on my daily newsletter. It's fluff-free, comes at you every day with new and interesting ways to be better as a man and better with women. Get in on all of the show notes for every episode, download the past episodes. And hey, you can also get on my calendar and talk to me for free for about a half an hour about what's going on with you and the women in your life or lack thereof. And if it makes sense to make a plan of action to coach you up to get the right woman in your life, well, of course, we'll do that as well. Our sponsors, as always, are Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, also the Keyport, and also Hero Soap Company. When you use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10, you'll get an additional 10% off at checkout when you partake of any of the fine goods from any of our three wonderful sponsors. And of course, gentlemen, if you have not checked out the master classes for men yet, I do one at the end of every month, a full deep dive into a particular topic that's going to make you better with women, make you a better man. You can check out the list of master classes that we've done already when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.